Welcome to the Arts Club of Washington, the oldest nonprofit arts organization in our nation's capital. My name is Jameson Freeman, and I have the honor, as of 30 days ago today, being the newly elected president of the Arts Club of Washington. The Arts Club is a very unique organization in that it highlights and amplifies all forms of artistic expression. So anything from dance, of course music, the dramatic arts, poetry, literature, etc. You name it, we do it or we want to do it. And we're also a living museum and an active arts gallery. I encourage you to consider membership of the Arts Club at any level. We have a variety of membership levels, but we are a vibrant community and we are a growing community. And so it's wonderful to be here with you this evening. I saw some of you upstairs, and the parlor at the top of the stairs as you kind of go up the second flight, that room is where President James Monroe had his first inauguration as the 5th President of the United States. The White House had not yet been rebuilt since they had a little fire from our friends the British, and so this was the executive mansion for the first 7 months of James Monroe's presidency. So that's some of our history in this historic building. I also want to say that it is it's an honor to have Bruce Fries among our esteemed membership, and particularly because I've learned something about Bruce recently, which is that he believes that life itself is art. He believes in the art of life. And I think that's so marvelous. And I think that now more than ever, if we consider our lives, a canvas and our most important masterpiece, it can potentially make us more thoughtful people, more compassionate people, and certainly more ambitious with our choices. So I'm so looking forward to this evening. And ladies and gentlemen, Bruce Fries.
Thank you, Jameson, and thanks everybody for coming out to this event. We've got two parts. The first part is going to be more of a science presentation on discovery and exploration of a significant cave system in Greenbrier County, West Virginia. Then we'll take a little break, and then we'll come back and see the fun stuff. Getting there is half the fun and often half the misery on the challenges, the triumphs of going to and from cave systems above and below ground. So to start part one, do a little bit of introduction to cave exploration. So caves are really the final frontier on Earth, under Earth. I fear that 5% of the cave systems that exist have been entered by humans, because most of them are deep underground, there's collapse, there's no ways to get into. So one of the attractions is you can go where no humans have gone before in terms of exploration. Now, I want to clarify some terminology. People say, oh, it's belonging. Well, I'm a caver. Cavers cave with a purpose. We do what's called project caving, where we explore, we map, we do scientific studies. The spelunkers are the ones that we rescue when they get injured or lost.
It's like snowboarders.
So that's the difference there. And there's a whole host of sciences involved with caving. Speleogenesis, how caves form, geology, hydrology, meteorology, archaeology, ecology, paleontology, and more. And the caver's mantra: take nothing but pictures, leave nothing but footprints, kill nothing but time. Now, snarky me, I've added one more element to that. So my version is take nothing but pictures, leave nothing but footprints, kill nothing but time, break nothing but wind. the other cavers were like, pollute the air. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do, hold it? I wonder why I'm not welcome at these other caving groups. So caving etiquette in terms of cave exploration, survey as you go, because a lot of times we're breaking new ground, discovering virgin cave, and there may be a chance there collapse or whatever gets in the way, we may not be able to return. So the common etiquette is to, if you discover something new, you can scoop a little bit, and check it out, but you really want to save the surveying, the grunt work, so the surveyors who document the cave get to see virgin passage. Do they see footprints? Like, I see footprints, what's up here, so that's part of the caving etiquette. And there's also many art forms with caving. Cartography, mapping, document, photography, videography, ephemeral arts, paintings, literary. And here's some example of cave art by ancient populations. Another example. And here's an example of art that the cave itself creates in combination with the environment, which provides the water, dissolves the calcite, and this is, we call the melt bottle formation. It's one of the findings of the project you will see in a minute on Savannah Cave. And then this is a combination of ephemeral art created by the cave and interaction with the environment. This is the entrance to Bruntwood Cave in wintertime. And this might exist for a couple of weeks and then it's gone. And there's some backlighted crystals there. So this next part is about the discovery and exploration of Savannah Cave. And it's called Through the Taggard because the Taggard is a notorious formation, a layer of rock that prevents cave development. And if you break through the Taggard, you can get to some large cave systems below. So when I started caving with the West Virginia Association of Cave Studies, that's WVACS, the caves were closed because of white nose syndrome. It's a fungal infection. It didn't kill bats directly, but it woke them up during their hibernation, and they burned up all their body fat and died. So what do? Cavers, so we do what's called ridge walking, looking for new caves and digging to try to open up new caves for exploration. So that's what I did for a couple of years before those closures were lifted. And I was at the WVACS field station, nice facility in Greenbrier County, West Virginia, in the map room, looking at maps of old caves, and I came across this mysterious map, sort of cryptic. It says Savannah Lane, St. Cline. I knew where Savannah Lane was, St. and then Taggard Shale outcrop. And I didn't think there was any Taggard Shale. I was like, wait a minute, if there's Taggard Shale there might be a way to get through it into the big caves below. And then on the next page, the excavated area, to a cave digger, this is like a treasure map. Like, whoa, so, I thought about this, where is this? I knew where Savannah Lane was, and, I never, I wondered where this buried treasure was. So I befriended a landowner, Alex Lewis. He had a 400-acre cattle farm right off Savannah Lane, and we spent a lot of time on his property digging in, getting small caves. His greatest fear was not that we would get injured, but that we'd give up before we found anything. So we spent a lot of time digging and getting into, a lot of cases, nothing, moving rocks with this John Deere tractor. And we even opened up a decent cave called Fault Line. Alex and I spent several weekends moving 40 tons of rock to open up this little cave. And he was so pleased, even though it was, less than 100 feet long, it was like his cave. We'd go there in the summertime, he'd hang out. It was, the cave temperatures average 52 degrees year round, so we'd go hang out, free refrigeration. And this is the art of cartography. My my friend Greg Springer drew this map. So it's been like a year and a half, and then there was this huge valley sink across the road from Alex's farm. And I had my Alex, and hey, that's interesting, that area. I've been looking at that, really for 10 years I was interested in that area because there was a lot of drainage, and in karst areas, most of the drainage is underground and water goes into caves. So I asked Alex about it. He's like, oh, well, that's on my property. My uncle said never to sell it because it has a surface stream, which is unusual in karst, and you could water your cattle there. And then he said, well, back in the 70s, there were some cavers back there using high explosives to try to open something up. And back in the 70s, you get a stick of dynamite for 25 cents. The cavers didn't know better, just blast and do more damage than you open stuff up. But so I walked over there. There's the main sink, and there's the excavated area. There's the buried treasure, right there. Like, whoa, this is this is pretty cool. And it turned out a caver friend of mine, Cliff Lindsay, was the one that was using high explosive there back in the 70s, and I even found his blasting wires when we were doing the excavation. The reason Cliff was so interested in it because the excavated area was at the intersection of a fault where layers of rock break and shift and allows water to get through, so that's how you get through the Taggard, and a liniment, which is similar to a fault, and there's Fault Line Cave, the one I showed you in the map. So it's like, okay, X marks the spot. So here are the different layers of limestone in that area. The Union's good limestone, Pickaway, which is what we were working with in Alex's farm, is sort of crappy. The caves don't go very far. But if you break through the Taggard, which is a shale formation, it's called an aquiclude, where generally water can't get through. There's some big cave passages below in the patent limestone. So it's like, hey, we can get through there, make our way through the fault, we might be able to get to some big cave. So I started out, my friend Carol Bassett and I, manual digging. He was a trouble. Using ATF-approved low explosives. Oops, okay, well, after a few minutes, we need to get some serious equipment. It's going to take forever, this way. So we decided we needed to dig big. And by dig big, get some heavy equipment. I got Carol's neighbor, Dave Johnson, had just purchased this Cat 312B excavator. It's like, Dave, we got a project for you. We took up a collection, raised $1,000, which is dirt cheap to get this type of machine for 2 days, including moving charge and everything. And Dave and my friend Ben brought his little Bobcat track machine. In a single day, he did what I expected would take him a week. So he did what's called benching. So he created a bench here and would excavate there and then throw it up to the higher level bench, and then Ben would move it further. And then he'd go to that mid bench and dig, because we needed to get deeper, and the cat, it only had an 18-foot reach. And then he'd go up to the higher bench and move the spoils from the middle bench up top there, and Ben would feed him with the Bobcat T140. And we get in, finally we got him some rocks, and Dave was just a very good operator. I was just amazed he could do this in one day. And then, now he's down on the lowest bench, and this is probably the limit of how deep he could dig with that 18-foot boom. And there he's like in the full reach, and now an opening, okay. Air, my friend Carol said, oh, it's sucking air. That means there's a cave because the air has to go somewhere. So we did a couple hours of hand digging to clear the rubble there, and then we got into about 20 feet of cave. We knew there was a lot more there, but say we got something there. So we did a little bit of in-cave digging because there's some narrow constrictions we needed to get through. So we used various rock breaking techniques. There's my friend Carol moving some of the rubble. See, we had some tight passages to open up. There's Alex Lewis, the landowner, helping us out. And then we broke through. Now, I was on the surface taking a break. My friend Mark Minden was working. Here's the entrance, and here's a tight spot, and he had his 4-pound hammer. And even though I was 30 feet above and 100 feet away, I could hear the ping, ping, ping of the hammer through the rock. All of a sudden, the noise stopped. Okay, what's up? So I had to go check it out. I knew they broke through. They didn't come out of the cave. So I go through this my very first time, and we had to explore this part. And then I get up here and I yell, "Hey guys, where are you?" And they said, "Don't go downstream." I just heard the part, "Go downstream." They were way up here, and downstream was through this narrow, really sharp-edged crawlway. And I'm like, okay, they said go downstream. So I go through there, I'm shredding my cave suit, which is ballistic nylon, and I pop out into this canyon. "Hey guys, where are you?" And then I hear the voices from behind me. Okay, we figured it out. Okay, you said don't go downstream. I know why. So this is the bypass. This is after we opened it up, and you can see the sharp, the sharp edges there that we cleared off. But that turned out to be a shortcut, and it opened up into a narrow canyon, which is nice, versus 2 foot high little crawl sleeves. And it became horizontal in a section we called the mumbles, because as we explored and surveyed as we went, there was this low sort of mumbling noise, like, what is that, tractors on the surface or something? We didn't know what it was. But there's some nice formations. Again, cave making some art. One of our cave explorers at Salkstead, we rescued a frog during the trip. Probably wouldn't survive very long with no light. Plenty of food gets washed in though, so maybe it would live to ripe old age. And then the character of the cave changed from a horizontal passage to steps of potholes, clean washed potholes, just stepping down and losing about 100 feet of elevation. So we call that the rumbles because the noise got louder. What's that? It's not tractors on the surface. We're starting to think maybe it's water. What else is going to make a rumbling noise? So here's a video of my friend Dave Stone and me. That's a real deep one. Some of these potholes are 8 feet deep.
What's the water temp?
What's that?
What's the water temp?
The water temp in this cave is about 52 degrees. Cave temperature is usually the average of the year-round temperature. And the water, once you get farther inside the cave, the water temperature is usually the same as the bedrock and air temperature. Close to the entrance, it might be a little bit different. So this is, here's the entrance. This part over here is called the B survey because we started there, we called that the A survey, and this is the B survey. There's the mumbles, and here's the beginning of the rumbles. And one day, my friend Carol Bassett and I, we were exploring the B survey, and the other team was surveying to the end of the rumbles. So Carol and I, it was real muddy and nasty, so we decided to exit the cave, but on the way out, we encountered the surveys team. Okay, that's not good news. They're leaving early. That means if something bad, they got a sump or a collapse, they couldn't go any further. Well, the reason they were exiting the cave, they got stopped by an 85-foot drop. And the reason that's called John's last step is literally, it could have been his last step because he was the lead surveyor. They were going to this nice clean washed canyon, and down this little mud slope here, he saw this foggy window. Look, there's a stream there, and he sort of slipped like right here, And then realized, wait a minute, it's not a stream, that fog is from a river down there, and it literally could have been his last step. So, and then we said, okay, there's a waterfall that makes the rumbling noise. Makes sense. And we were sure the waterfall was to the right because it sounded like the sound was there. Waterfalls pull the air down and circulates back. And it turns out that was not the case in this. But anyway, this window here was an opening 85 feet above the floor of a 100-foot tall trunk passage. This is the big passage that we were trying to get through. So we punched through the Taggard and gotten into the big passage of the patent limestone below. So hearing this news, I had to go back and check it out. So Chad, who was on the survey team, took me back there, and I slipped and got immersed in one of the potholes, and my video camera got immersed, but I popped it out quick enough. So we wanted to see how deep the drop was. So to measure it, we shot video, and we timed from the frame that he released the rock until we could hear the sound of it hitting the bottom. And then used a simple formula. You subtract a little bit for the speed of sound, not much, and we came up with 80 feet. Turns out it was 85 feet. That's a decent sized drop. And I mentioned about etiquette, survey as you go. Well, we decided that this was a big find. We wanted to save the excitement of descending the drop and seeing the room and passage below to a point where all the members of the project could have a chance to participate. So we didn't just grab a rope. I thought, okay, well, wait a minute, we've got some work to do, some mop-up survey. We need to stabilize the entrance. So somebody, okay, let's eat our dessert. No, let's eat our vegetables first before dessert. Okay, I'm the one that likes to go dessert first. So this is the entrance at excavation after a storm, and all this is going to collapse, fill in or dig. We're going to have to dig it out again. So the first order of business was stabilization. So to stabilize, we used the rock from the excavation to build essentially a stone chimney. That's Alex and his tractor. And we had a lot of rocks from the excavation, more than enough. So we pressure washed them because we were going to hold them together as concrete. And there were some big rocks we needed to make smaller. So you see an example here using Carol Bassett's Max Tracker. There's crickets.
Fire low. Can't beat that.
Crickets are back in phase. They're still cricketing. Yeah.
What's the way you broke that all over there, though?
We make tables out of those. So we organized a couple weekends. We got a concrete mixer, and a lot of volunteers. And we set up a tripod so we could lower the big rocks to make lintels. There's an example there. And it's a little sketchy, so this takes us caution, enter at your own risk. And we put a jack there just to reduce the risk of the collapse. And there's our helpers. And then we slid the rocks down in the dirt just to get them down there, like gravity work. The problem was, we slid them down, they got dirty again, so we had to clean them off. So it's okay, pressure washer. And then we thought, okay, so we made a wooden ramp for the rest of them. So we used a high line to transport the concrete down. And then I was the lead mason, positioning the rocks and doing some of my handiwork. And as we did it, we left protrusions and pockets for handholds and footholds, because this is a vertical chimney, because we didn't want people to have to use a rope. And you can see them behind me there. So we used some rebar, reinforcement, made some lintels. And this is what we accomplished the first weekend. We wanted to make what we call a 500-year entrance. something that's going to be there a long time. And using the natural stones in the excavation was a nice touch. But that still wasn't high enough because everything would collapse in and soon cover that up. So the next weekend we came back and we raised it another 6 feet. We went from square to round for aesthetics. And that was our final, the top there. And since then, it's collapsed in. It's about a foot from the top of that. So it's a good thing we did that before we needed to. And there's our excavation site. And this is such a significant discovery that geology professors from some of the local universities brought their grad students to check it out. And this is all before we did the trip where we actually dropped through the Taggard into the big passage. Now, I mentioned scooping is, a violation of cave ethics. Well, one weekend we came back to the project to finish up on the surface stabilization, but the landowner next door was there and he was like, hey, nice cave. My nephew and I, we went in there and checked it out and we saw the drop and come back with the rope and no. Fortunately, they didn't. And we explained, the whole ethics and everything. And it turns out that part of the cave was on his property because it's on the other side of the fence. So technically, he could do whatever he wanted, although he didn't know that. So then we set the date for dropping the 85-foot drop the first time. And there's our team. The photographer, George Nugent, is in the audience here. He was present at that point.
Let's hear it for that guy. I was honored.
There's the rest of our team there. That's Adam's legs going through. That's him going through a sketchy part. We put a little rope there, but it's still a little sketchy, so he didn't drown going through there. And then he and his girlfriend May, we let her, ladies first. Ladies first. First one to go down the drop. Now there was a problem with that ponytail because about 20 feet down, the ponytail got caught in rappel gear. Fortunately, she was an experienced caver, and within 5 minutes, she put on her ascenders and worked her way up. Because otherwise, we'd have to roll, bring another rope, go down, and then take a knife, whatever, cut that out. Ponytail, sorry. So we got there. So the waterfall was at the opposite end of the room, which was also interesting because the drainage came from north to south, and this is coming from the south, so the drainage had to make a 180-degree turn for the water to enter the cave. So this is called Taggard Falls, where it punches through the Taggard shale. I think it's the 7th highest waterfall in the state of West Virginia. So nice fun. And there's no plunge pool, it just goes down on rocks. And the far end of the cave where drainage is sunk, so we couldn't, sort of disappointing, but still this was a nice find. So really the only way on was up the waterfall. So my friend Mark Minton and a team of cavers, Yvonne Brahms, Lily, and Bob Alderson, spent 4 days doing a bolt climb up this wall because they couldn't do it under the waterfall, so they had to climb up, about 50 feet away, then traverse and rig the ropes to the top of the drop. And then they came back and did a separate trip where they actually explored the upstream above the waterfall. So this is the first trip. Before that, when we did the drop, one of the members of our team had some issues with fear of heights. So he got on the rope and just sort of froze. So we're down there like waiting and, okay, what's going on? We see it's light and nothing's happening. We had to talk him down. You're okay, you're not going to die. And I said, okay, what's going on? Fortunately, Adam had his harmonica to entertain us. Okay, there he is. All right, yeah. He was our chief photographer. We couldn't do without him. So they surveyed the drop, 85 feet. Well, they had it 80 feet. And I'm like, hey, do the floor 5 feet lower. Let's go with 85. That sounds better. So then we're doing the survey as we go. There's our tape. Nowadays we use distos and laser measurements. And that's John doing the sketch, entering the survey data. And you can see so this is his sketch that becomes the art that's cartography. And here is the map of John's last step and what we call the big room. Really, it's a segment of a big trunk passage that there's collapse and sunk there, but farther downstream there's probably miles of 100-foot high ceilings. It's just because of the falling and collapsing, humans are not going to be able to see most of that. Although eventually we did a dye trace between Savannah Cave, we put dye in the stream, and we checked out where it came into another cave system nearby, which is now called the Great Savannah Cave System, and this is one of the entrances, and it's now the longest cave in West Virginia. So here's the map of a lot of interesting passage there, and then this nice room, and then the V survey, a little muddy and nasty, but it also goes through the Taggard, and there's an option for us to maybe get into deeper cave through there, deeper exploration. So the process, at the top of the drop, there's a little stream and the water drip onto the rope. And so my friend Greg Springer and I, he's a geology professor, we were enlarging that using what we call explosives. And so like here's a little drip, and it drips right down on the rope. So I set one of the charges, and Greg was like sitting right there, and when I was there, we backed away. We want to be at least a few feet away from the explosion, and it didn't go off. So okay, now drill it out. This is bunkus powder. Yeah, we use an electronic ignition. So a hammer drill. I drill it out, put a new one in. And well, it turned out the hammer drill set off the charge right underneath Professor Springer. Now, fortunately, it didn't injure him, and he didn't have loose valves for the next couple of days. But, so, whenever there's a mishap, we have to commemorate it. So, Springer did this cartoon of me, bruised, packed slightly for a change, and just like an errant student in high school, I wrote, "I will not drill out live charges under Springer. I will not drill out live charges under Springer." My punishment. And then I have to commemorate all the mishaps of the limerick. Lessons learned, and there's about a dozen of these. We're trying not to accumulate. So there once was a caver named Freeze who blasted whenever he pleased. Till one day under Springer, he set off his zinger, "Don't drill out Dutch straws, cavers, please." Now I'm not going to show you the other ones. This is just one of many there. So we have the 4-day bolt climb, where they started on this wall and then traversed over and got up to the top of the falls. This is a profile of the big room. And here's the passage they found above the waterfall. And Mark Vinton, who's a world-class caver, has done a lot of caving all over the world. So this is very unique for West Virginia. This is like in Puerto Rico or South America, the water cave, cascades and everything. So here's a picture of him drilling. It's very tedious. You drill, you set the bolt hanger, and then you lift your way up. That's why it took 4 days and a couple teams to do this stuff. And here he is on the second or third bolt. And here he is almost above the waterfall. So this here is a traverse line going horizontal. This is a J-hang where you rappel down and then you ascend back up. And the idea is to stay out of the water. So right now, the rope here is, and then you rig a rope so you just go straight up the rope after you've done that. But you want to keep it out of the water. So this video, the Great Savannah Waterfall Climb, the team of 4 cavers got ready to go in, and before they went in, I had this handheld video camera that I put a special lens on it so it could, I didn't want wide angle because I knew they'd be 50 feet away on them. So I handed it to Bob Alderson, who's also known as Spider-Man. I said, Bob, here, take this, press the red button, get some footage. And what you'll see now is the footage he got. Now keep in mind, he's getting this footage, he's hanging on a rope 85 feet above the ground, hand holding this and holding onto the rope. And there's the team. Yvonne Drums, Zeb Lilly, Bob Alderson, Spider-Man, and Mark Menton. That's Yvonne, he's playing. Now, you might not have heard that, but the voice is saying if he can't rig that out of the water, we're going to have a problem. And at this point, Mark is in the lead, and for about 10-20 seconds, he's actually under the waterfall. Because the flow rate had come up, and now the rope that was out of the water is in the water. Never before been visited by humans. Now think about it, Mark is doing a traverse. How did the rope get upstream for him to traverse? Well, Spider-Man, Bob Alderson, free climb up to a high ledge, dragging the rope, and then secured it on the other end and tightened it up. That's how it got there. So somebody has to go first. That's why they call him Spider-Man. So here's an example of the upper ledge that traverse. Nice looking passage there. And this is looking downstream at Mark, Cascades. And they're tied in, but if you're not tied in and you slip in the water, you can wash over the falls. There's no plunge proof, so you just go splat on the rocks. At least you die quickly, that way you don't drown.
You guys must be in the dark like 90% of the time, right?
Well,
I mean, you don't have these lights on unless you're taking photos, right?
well, we have our headlamps.
Gotcha.
But the caves are in the dark 100% of the time, except when humans are in there. So upstream, it's stumped. Well, disappointing, but still a nice find. And this is where the ceiling comes down, and one of the next steps is to bring in a dive team to dive the sump and explore its upstream. I will never see that part of the cave. So here's a list of all the surveyors and diggers, all the people who worked on the project. Cartography, John Tudek, videography, photography, and that's the end of part one. And we'll take a little break and come back for part two.